Hello and welcome to Rajaji Meshram. He's a distinguished fellow of the Infravision Foundation, but more than that, he's a transport and logistics expert. Has been in the business for the longest time, I think over 2 decades, and currently consults with the Asian Development Bank. Hello and welcome, Rajaji. I thought we'd use this opportunity to discuss the sustainability ratings research paper that the Envin Foundation has done, which you have supervised and closely looked at, and discuss the whole idea of sustainability ratings. Why do we need them in India at this point when, the ecology and the economy seem to be at war with each other, not just in India, but all over the world? There's this, both things are held in balance when decisions are taken on infrastructure projects. Why do we need this and how effective can it be? So to begin with, why the need for sustainability ratings for infrastructure projects in India?
Right. So India is right now at a very important juncture. We are well on the course to become the third largest economy in the world after India and China, after US and China. But our ambition doesn't stop there. We are aiming to be a 5 trillion economy by 2026 and a 10 trillion economy by 2035. And to do that, we do need a step jump in infrastructure spending. We need transport projects, we need better water and sanitation projects, energy projects, real estate projects, logistics projects to be able to increase the GDP of our country, increase the standard of living. And when we do all of this, it is inevitable that there's going to be an impact on the environment as well as on the society. Today, we do have, on a project basis, some kind of environmental impact assessment or a social impact assessment. But what one would appreciate is that this entire process of doing an environmental impact study, a social impact study, is done by very specialized agencies. It is done looking at multiple parameters and to interpret and to understand what are the mitigation measures that are being put in to counter the environmental impact or the social impact is something that needs, I think, a certain level of expertise to understand. If you had a rating which would just communicate the sustainability aspect of a project, which includes not just the environmental part of it, not just the social part of it, but it also looks at the stakeholders of the community. It looks at a long-term impact of climate change. It looks at how it impacts generations in the future as well, not immediately how the environment or society is impacted. If you looked at all those aspects, then the way we will reach this path of 5 trillion or 10 trillion will be sustainable. It will not cause a fissure, it will not cause a society which is maybe, where the income variations are very diverse, but it's more a sustainable kind of economic development in our country, which will just include everybody in the rise and not just a certain class of society. So that's why looking at sustainability is very important.
Right, and it will also be more systematic, isn't it, Rajaji? Currently, the system of assessing the environmental and social impact of an infrastructure project is not necessarily very systematized. Isn't that so?
I would say that it is systematized, but as I articulated in the beginning, it is not very easy to understand. So let us take the analogy of whenever you're buying a bond, a financial instrument, you just get a credit rating from agencies like CRISIL and then you, at one go, you understand whether you are going to invest in the bond or not. If it is a AAA rated bond, you know that this bond is something that you can trust and invest in. You don't need to go through the balance sheet or the background of the company to understand what the promoters are doing, what the debt books are, etc., etc. You just rely on the bond rating. So similarly, while there is a system of doing an environmental social impact assessment, if you were the leader of an organization, had to decide, okay, should we go ahead with this project or not? you would have to then go through all those documents. But in its place, if you were just given a rating that this is on a sustainability rating, it's 5, it's a gold standard. It makes that much, your ability to take a decision that much more easier.
Right. So do you need a completely new architecture to implement this, or can we do it with the existing architecture?
You do need a nodal agency which will kind of look at the ratings.
Which you've suggested.
Because right now, sorry?
Which has been suggested in the paper.
Yes. So while there are very specific organizations which do environmental studies and social impact studies, if we are going after a rating for every project, what we have suggested in the study is that there is the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, NABFID, which has been set up. Now, this body can act as the regulatory body for the administration of the ratings, for regulating the ratings process, and for promoting the adoption of such a rating process. So, to that extent, yes, a new kind of an ecosystem is required. There is a lot of, education that needs to be given to various stakeholders. While there are, the benefits can be very well articulated to the government, to the stakeholders, to the community, to the financials of projects at large. But yes, there is a framework that is required to put sustainability ratings in place.
Right. What can we learn from credit rating agencies which have had a longer experience of, helping people, helping companies, corporates and people decide? What are the things that we can learn from their experience?
So I think what you can learn is that over a period of time, for any rating to work, there has to be some kind of a pull factor. You can't just push a rating on a certain stakeholder community, but you need to create a pull factor. Now, the rating agencies over a period of time have created a robust system and people rely on that. Before anyone kind of invests or looks at a company to extend a debt, they do look at the rating of other debt instruments given by that company. And that helps them to decide, whether to further finance certain projects with the company or not. So I think the key learning from the existing credit rating system is that over a period of time, there has to be enough pull factor created. There has to be a robust mechanism. There has to be credibility. There have to be agencies with reputation, which will stick to the process. They are absolutely agnostic to who or what the project is all about. They follow a certain process. It's process driven, and the process driven whatever gives out an outcome which very clearly says this is the rating. And over a period of time, once there is a trust in the system, only then will this pick up. And therefore, starting right on with very robust processes is extremely essential for the system to work.
How quickly do you think this can be turned around in a country like India, where it does take time to set up institutions?
So I think the institution is already there, which is the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development. It's more about the buy-in. India, you're right to say that it does. It's a large country. To that extent, there are a lot of stakeholders. But if you see the kind of things that have happened in our country, especially the digitization or the adoption of UPI, it has actually happened at a fast pace.
Remarkable.
So, there are evidences that if there is a buy-in from the larger stakeholders, things really, really pick up very, very fast. So in my mind, setting up the process itself and the forms and the KPIs, etc., is not going to be as challenging. What's going to be more challenging is the buy-in. I mean, convincing the group of stakeholders, which is the government, the banks, the infrastructure developers, foreign financiers, etc., that such a rating is going to be beneficial for our country's ambitions of growing into a $10 trillion economy is absolutely the right way to go. I mean, convincing them of that would be the bigger hurdle to cross. Once that hurdle is crossed, then designing the processes is not going to be as challenging in my mind, because environmental, social impact, or even the credit rating system which is there, which looks at giving ratings to debt instruments, etc., already exists. This is an adoption of that process but looking at sustainability rating as the outcome.
Yeah.
So the buy-in is the most important hurdle.
How do we do that? What would be the magic there?
So I think here is where organizations like the Infravision Foundation can play a role, because when you kind of want to get a buy-in into a new idea, there is no alternative to the legwork. You do need to meet people. You do need to propose the new idea to important influencers or important, let us say the decision makers in the system. Speak to bank associations, speak to top bureaucrats, speak to the ministers, speak to organizations like Niti Aayog, and bounce off this idea, share with them what's the precedence in other countries. Other countries do have these kind of ratings, and convince them on how this is going to aid India in choosing our projects in such a manner that it is sustainable, and in also helping to develop funding sources for this ambitious growth path that we have. There's no alternative to that. We need to, because it's a new idea. Anything that is new will take time to get adopted, and therefore the initial legwork is something that absolutely will need to be done.
Right. I was just wondering, Rajaji, the 102 parameters of the rating, is that something that is a global, do we have global precedence for that as well, or is this an unusually long list of parameters?
It is not an unusually long parameters. In fact, the NWIN team did a good job in what in following a certain framework. So what they did was that they looked at what kind of internal assessments Asian Development Bank and World Bank do when they look at infrastructure projects. So they themselves, the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank and all the multilateral agencies themselves have very stringent standards of environmental and social impact assessments for their own internal approval purposes. So when the team made a list of KPIs, they looked at what were the questions that these multilateral organizations actually looked at when they themselves did their internal environmental and social impact assessments. And post that, in fact, they started off with a much longer list than 102, and they kind of filtered it down and brought it to 102. In fact, what I remember is that they started off with 63 themes and 577 KPIs, and then they filtered it down and brought it down to 15 themes and 102 KPIs. And the KPIs are kind of divided into these themes, which looks at what is the policy impact assessment, what is the emissions and climate change impacts, what are the water use and management, what is the waste and circularity. So it was done through a matter of iteration to arrive at these 102 KPIs. But I think that these are things which are absolutely essential. If you look at sustainability, after all, an infrastructure project does have just imagine in your mind a road or a power plant. It covers a huge amount of area. It affects so many families in the land area that it is constructed on. It is a complicated thing, and therefore 102 KPIs is, in my view, quite efficient. And of course, this will go through a system of evolution. Maybe it will get longer, maybe it will get shorter. But that's a system of, that's a process of evolution. But as of now, it has been constructed and composed of by looking at other standards and filtering it down from a very large number to 102.
Right. So you would say that this is one of the most essential things that we need to do to get ahead when we talk about our infrastructure goals.
Yes. I mean, I would say that this is a way in which the way I visualize it is that, our country has so many projects going on at the same time. Now, if at the absolute country level, we wish to ensure that the projects that are being constructed are not causing more damage than they are helping. How does a person get an all India view? Yeah. I mean, it's not humanly possible to look at the environmental and social impact reports of each and every infrastructure project.
Right.
One project somewhere, because of climate change and the rising sea levels, maybe the long coastline of India and the cities and the towns which are there could be facing some danger. And if somebody is planning an infrastructure or a road or a building project there, and in 10, 20, 30 years time, it gets submerged because of the rising water level. I mean, is somebody thinking about it now? I mean, the question that need to be asked, look at sustainability. It's not about just doing a project now. Infrastructure projects are not for the medium term or the short term. They are for the long term. And they are going to help not just the current generation, they're going to help the future generation. So this is one way of just, helping leaders understand that overall the portfolio of projects that we have in our country, are they sustainable? Are we going on the right track? Are we kind of committing to projects which is going to cause more harm than good? This is a very easy way of implementing that. And as it gets refined, it can serve, better purposes of choosing projects, of financing the right projects, etc.
The last question, Rajaji, you've been in this field for so long now. Have you seen the needle move in terms of the concern for environment among leaders, among communities, among people that infrastructure impacts? Have you seen a greater understanding, a greater understanding of this idea that yes, these projects can have environmental impact and this can affect our future? Have you seen that change happening?
I think, at least on the side of the multilateral institutions that I work with, I do see that there is a focus on environmental and climate change aspects than to a level where it was never there before. Definitely, there are segments which are very, very clearly kind of move the needle to a very extreme level in looking at this aspect. As you rightly said right in the beginning, we are a country which are still in the growth phase, and there are contradictory requirements. On one side, you need infrastructure projects to develop, allow us to grow at a fast pace as is required to lift the standard of living of the citizens of our country. And at the same time, it needs to be sustainable. And I do feel that there is a recognition of that. There are many more checks and balances. I mean, the very fact that we have taken up this study is because that there is a general awareness, there is a general need felt that, you just can't bankroll and just build roads wherever you want, or build power plants to the, for large gigawatts of capacity. In fact, if you see the kind of announcement that the government is doing, for example, the Indian Railways, the railway sector, which I look at, wants to be net zero by 2030. They have stopped diesel locomotive traction. They have decided on 100% electrification. And these kind of big decisions and big announcements kind of are an indication that there is an increasing awareness that just building infrastructure is not enough. Building sustainable infrastructure is the need of the hour.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for talking to us, Rajaji. And it really is a report that needs to be widely circulated. We'll come back to you for help on that as well. But thank you so much for now. Thank you.
Thank you.